Alright, hi guys. Quick little video here on naming parts of shapes. And this is kind of a simple thing in geometry, but it's so easy to get everything mixed up. So we're just going to kind of go through a few basic skills you want to make sure that you're good at. And that's just being able to read and name shapes. So we're going to start with the fact that most things we do in geometry are based on points, lines, planes, and angles. And there's a whole bunch more, but we're going to start with that today. Points, lines, planes, and angles. So some of this seems kind of simple, like a point. We all know what a point is. Let's start with that first. So points. Points don't really have a size. You can make them big or small, but they don't actually have a size. They're just these, we draw them as dots. But we need some sort of way to label them. So the common way of labeling them is to give them a letter, like A, B, C, D, and whatnot. We use capital letters when we're talking about points. So capital A, capital B, capital C. You can see where there's some issues. Like right now, what I just did is not good. I have 2 point B's and that's confusing. So you have to use different letters. Make sure you don't use, the same letter twice when you're talking about the points. So capital letters, use different letters. You could call this X, Y, Z, whatever you feel like, as long as they're all different. And then the reason we need points is we usually go from a couple of points to talking about lines. So now I'm going to talk about lines. So we know what lines are. I can draw a line really easily. Lines just kind of keep on going forever and ever. So we usually draw these arrows to show that they're just going to keep going both directions. And there's points on these lines. So if I felt like it, I could go and I could put a point here, and I could put a point here, and I could put a point here, and I could draw lots and lots of points if I felt like it. But we can label these points. Since they're points, they have capital letters like A, B, C. So if I'm talking about this line, one way to do it is to use the points. Well, if A, B, C is on this line, then I could say, well, this is line, and I'll draw it like this. Draw a little line, and I'll name 2 points, any 2 points I want. So I could use AB, AC. I'm going to use AB. And when you read this out loud, when you see this written on the page, this is line AB. And everybody knows what line that is because it's the one with A and B on it. Now, if you want to be different and be like, oh no, it's line AC, like this, that's okay too. It's the same line. So it doesn't actually matter. So then you'd say this is line AC. Sometimes you're going to see some textbooks and some people do it differently. Sometimes they don't put any points on the line. Instead, they just use a letter at the end by the arrows. And it's usually a cursive letter, lowercase, like L, a cursive L. And they would say, okay, now this is line L. And so when they write that, they'd write it like this. They'd write line L, the cursive letter. And if you want to do it that way, that's totally fine. You can either use the letter that's cursive at the end, or you can use the points. Kind of just depends what's in front of you. So we got points, we got lines. The next thing we're going to talk really briefly about is planes. And planes are flat surfaces. Like a piece of paper is a plane. It's a total flat surface. So when we draw a plane, which I better scoot this down, when we draw a plane, it's kind of like a flat piece of paper. We use slanted edges. And here is a plane. Just picture a piece of paper or something. And so if we want to name this plane, we put it in the corner, in one of the corners, and we use a capital cursive letter. See how you can kind of start to forget all this stuff? So like you could do a capital N or something, kind of a, there we go. And then when we write it, we'd write plane N. Just like that. So a capital cursive letter. And if you want on the plane, you can put points on the plane. You can draw lines on the plane. I could decide like, oh yeah, I want to have a line going across the plane here. Just picture like a piece of paper with a line going across it, and that's the concept. And I could name the line. I could put points on it and be like, oh yeah, here's X and Y. So we've got points, we've got lines. You can even have a piece of paper with a line going straight through it, like down through the middle. So when we draw that, a lot of times we draw it like this, like here's a line going straight through the piece of paper. And you can do that too. You can have lines cut right through the plane. So we got points, lines, and planes. Now let's talk about angles. So I'm going to take this piece of paper off. Angles can be named lots of different ways. And so the way angles are formed is we start talking about drawing more than one line. So I'm going to make up some lines here. Here's a line. And here's another line. And we know that most lines have points on them. So I could start putting some points on here. I could put, here's A. How about here's B? Here's M. I'm using capital letters. Here's T. And here's R. I could put more points on here too, but that's a lot of points. So if I want to start talking about angles, I have to use the letters from the lines to kind of describe them. So like, let's start with this one right here, this angle. I'll use a red mark here. We could call this angle 1. That would be a real simple way of doing it. So I could say like, okay, well I have a little picture of an angle here, angle 1. I could write it like that. And when you see this symbol and you read it out loud, you read it as angle 1. So we all know what you're talking about. So if you wrote down angle 1, I know you're talking about this spot. A lot of times, you're not going to use a number. Instead, you're going to use the letters that make up the angle. So look really closely at angle 1. It's made up from letters A to M to T. So it goes A, M, T. Or you can go backwards. You could go T, M, A. But M's in the middle. It's right at the corner. So when you write angle, you're going to use those 3 letters, and you're either going to go A, M, T, like this, A, M, T, and that's good. That's angle A, M, T. Or you could have gone backwards. You could have gone T, M, A. So angle T, M, A. All 3 ways right here mean the same angle. They're all talking about this one spot, as long as the M is in the middle of the letters, or use the right number. So lots of ways you could kind of denote these angles. So let's say I changed it up on you and said, okay, now I want to talk about this angle over here. I'll call it angle 2. Can you pause the video and can you write 3 different ways for this one angle? How could you do it? Try it. Pause the video and try and write out these angles. Okay, so hopefully you pause the video. The way we're going to do angle 2 is one way is we're going to write angle 2, just like it sounds. Or we can use the letters. So look at the letters. It goes from A to M to R. So angle A, M, R. Or if you want to go backwards, start with the R, R, M, A. So angle R, M, A. So there's lots of different ways you can do this. Most of the time in class, I'm probably going to be using the points. But, you know, we go back and forth, so it just kind of depends. So here's what we're going to do. Let's do an example under this and try a problem here. And we're going to draw a picture of a couple of lines. So let's see, a line going like this and a line going like this. And we're going to add some points on here. We're going to put a point over here, call it B. We'll call this C. We'll call this one over here A. And we'll call this one D. I just made these up, but you get the idea. If I asked you to find angle BCA, could you find that angle quickly? BCA. So when I see this BCA, when I say it out loud, that's what I'm going to do on my page. BCA. I just kind of follow those directions. B to C to A. Well, yeah, that must be this angle right here. That's got to be the angle. So angle BCA, it's got to be right in that corner. I just follow those letters. I could have named the angle ACB and gone backwards. It would have been the same thing. ACB. So we got points, we got lines, we got planes, we've got angles. There's a lot of things to remember here. The last thing I'm going to show you for this video is if you know how to measure an angle, there's a word we use for that. So let's pick an angle that we all know, like 90 degrees. We know that if you draw a sharp corner like this, sometimes we put a little box here, but we know that we can say that this is 90 degrees. And we're going to name this angle. So I'm going to use some letters. Let's use M, R, T. So if I said, what's the measurement of this angle? You'd be like, well, okay, so let's look at the angle. It goes MRT. So MRT. But I want to know what's its measurement. So I'm not just going to write angle MRT. I'm going to write measurement of angle MRT. And the little m out here means measurement. And what's the measurement of this angle? Oh, well, it's right in front of me. It's 90 degrees. So this measurement of MRT is 90 degrees. And this out loud is measurement of angle MRT. Measurement of angle MRT. That's how you read that. So sometimes you're going to see the little m, and you'll know that it just stands for measurement.